Shalom and welcome. You're listening to Temple Talk from the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. Today, the 8th day of the month of Sivan, 5775. It's May the 26th, 2015. We have finished counting the Omer, and this week, Parshat Nassau, the second Torah portion in the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar. We just observed the festival of Shavuot, which is the festival of the first fruits in the Holy Temple and the anniversary of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And the truth is, the festival of Shavuot is different than the other two pilgrimage festivals, Passover, Pesach, and Sukkot, Tabernacles, in that it's only one day. Of course, there is the second day of the diaspora for those that live outside the land of Israel, but we don't have the Chol HaMoed, the intermediary days of the festival. And the fact is, though, that in the time of the temple, really this entire week is still being observed with a festivity in the Holy Temple, simply for the reason that the majority of the pilgrims who came to the Holy Temple were not able to logistically be processed with all of the offerings that they were bringing for the holiday. They couldn't get it all done in one day. And so, first of all, in the Holy Temple, from what we learn, the majority of the offerings that were brought by the festive pilgrims were actually brought in the Holy Temple on the day after the festival, which was yesterday, which is known as Isru Chag, which is a day that is observed as a minor, with certain minor holiday trappings, let's say. But besides that, besides the day after the festival Isru Chag, what I wanted to say is that these next 6 days following the festival of Shavuot in the Tiny Temple are still kind of Shavuot itself, an extension in the Holy Temple. And that's reflected actually by some changes in our prayer service, that we're still kind of conducting ourselves on the footing of a half a festival. But just yesterday, here in Jerusalem, there was a very festive event, which is so much in the spirit of everything that we're saying now about how the festivities in the Holy Temple continue even the day after Shavuot. And there was a very, very beautiful happening yesterday that expresses again the character of our generation and the tremendous desire and thirst for all things related to the Holy Temple to be resumed. And Yitzchak, can you tell us all about that?
Yes, Rabbi, I can try. It was conducted on the Sherover Promenade, which is located to the southeast, I guess, of the Temple Mount. And from that promenade, you have a very beautiful view of the Temple Mount. So in the background of this ceremony, of this reenactment, was the Temple Mount, which of course made it all the more powerful. And the reenactment was led by our own Rabbi Yisrael Ariel and his son, Rabbi Azariah Ariel, who have researched, of course, the offering of the Bikurim, the first fruits, the wave offering of the twin loaves offering, which are 2 baked loaves of bread, specially baked in a special fashion for this occasion. And we also had on order a few lambs who were to be delivered. They were not going to be slaughtered, but they were going to be part of the scenery of this festive occasion, because of course in the Holy Temple on Shavuot lambs were also offered, but due to some kind of traffic congestion of some sort, the lambs, which were coming from somewhat far away, did not make it in time for the reenactment. However, many hundreds of people, including a whole number of school children, came in different groups with their teachers, with their rabbis from around the country. In fact, Rabbi Ariel also introduced a few people who came as far as Brooklyn, from the United States who participated. As I said, we had a reconstructed altar, mizbeach, and baskets of first fruits. And it was a very, very beautiful ceremony and very educational, as rabbis Yisrael and Azariah Ariel were teaching what people were seeing as it was being done. In fact, something which I found to be very, very special was that in an intermission, individuals were taking these baskets of fruit, the first fruits, and with the Kohanim, because of course we had our own Kohanim there from our school academy for teaching the Kohanim, the laws of the offerings, the academy which is called Nezer HaKodesh, and they were actually performing the wave offering of the first fruits with the Kohanim, which actually, like a very beautiful piece of choreography, you could say. And these were people who had sort of seen their own initiative, just picked up the baskets and connected with the Kohanim, and were doing this. Again, it was all a reenactment and all sort of a dry run
because
of
the
practice.
first fruits actually have to be brought to the Holy Temple. It's a special requirement that the temple is standing to bring the first fruits to. But again, everything that we're doing in this generation is for getting ready so that we'll know how to do these things. The first fruit ceremony is so deeply entrenched in the collective consciousness of Israel. And like you say, that people went over and picked up the baskets and wanted to feel some of the experience, and you use the expression connected to the Kohanim. That is one of the major themes of this week's Torah portion, Parshat Naso, that we're going to be speaking about in our video lesson. The connection that we all have through the Kohanim in the Holy Temple that brings in the divine presence. And I think that's something in the DNA of the Jewish people that is just thirsting for that connection, and the fact that you see so many young people and so many people from really all walks of life that come to these beautiful events. And we've had quite a number of series of these events in the past year. We had the making of the olive oil impurity for Hanukkah. We had the Passover offering, of course.
Omer.
And the Omer preparation as well, the second day of Passover. So it's the same as the people that are coming to go up to the Temple Mount, the families, the young people, the generation that's trying to reclaim the truth of Jewish identity. And for those that follow our Facebook page, we should be having some photographs to be putting up very, very soon.
Some photographs, also some footage, and we hope to put together a nice short video showing the reenactment. One last aspect, which is also very, very beautiful, was the Sudat Kohanim, that the Kohanim present actually sat down for a meal. They ate the twin loaves, and I guess in the Holy Temple they would be eating it in the Beit HaMoked, which was located right adjacent, right off the inner courtyard, right next to the altar, which is where they need to be eating it in the Holy Temple. But of course, this reenactment, they sat and ate from these loaves of bread, which, by the way, were very, very heavily researched as to how to bake these special loaves, and was being explained to us by one of the women of the organization Women for the Holy Temple, who were the bakers of the bread, that they were experimenting with different methods and different types of wheat, and different amounts of ingredients in order to create, I guess, the most successful and also the tastiest loaves that they could. So it's really a work in progress, because there is a lot to learn, and again, these are all fine arts, really. The preparation of all these offerings, all these different aspects of the temple offerings have to be relearned.
We're on our way to reactivating everything, and by the way, the season of bringing the first fruits, according to Torah, on the calendar of the Holy Temple begins with Shavuot, the festival of the harvest, but it's actually of the reaping, excuse me. But it actually continues all throughout the summer. For example, a person can make the pilgrimage to the Holy Temple and bring the first fruits. If they weren't able to come on Shavuot, they can also come until Sukkot, and actually even until Hanukkah. So if the temple is built within a few months' time, we still have a chance of bringing first fruits. Hopefully, this past festival of Shavuot, which we just observed this week, brought us closer to a personal relationship with Torah study, because that's really the theme of Shavuot, especially as it's observed today, the reliving of the Sinai revelation and the fact that the Torah is the legacy of all of Israel, and we receive it, and that means that it's real. That means that it's a commitment, and that means that the covenant is renewed, and that we find ourselves there. Interestingly, there's something extraordinary about the Parsha, the Torah portion that we're reading this Shabbat, that is very striking and worthy of mention. Parshat Naso. Yitzchak, do you guess what I might be referring to? Something that stands out about Parshat Naso is that it is the longest Torah portion of all. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it wouldn't be fitting if right after we stayed up the whole night studying Torah and redoubled our commitment and our love for the Torah, and it's like a wedding ceremony that took place on Mount Sinai, with Israel as the bride and God as the groom, and Mount Sinai as the chuppah, and the Torah as the ketubah. It wouldn't be nice if we had a very, very short Torah portion this Shabbat and we just went to sleep in the afternoon, took a long nap because we're off the hook. So apparently God felt the same way, and the Parsha that is always read after Shavuot, which is Parshat Naso, is the largest Torah portion. It actually contains 176 verses. And you know why that's really amazing? Because that is the same number of verses in the longest chapter of the book of Psalms as well, which is 119. And it's also interesting to note that the longest tractate of the Talmud, which is Tractate Bava Batra, also contains 176 pages. I just thought I'd throw that out so you can figure it out yourself, what it's all about. In any event, again, this whole idea of our relationship with the Torah as individuals and as a nation is very much honed and internalized, I think, on Shavuot. The whole idea of staying up and rectifying, that midrashic account of how Israel overslept, right? I got to tell you something. You know what I'm referring to, Yitzchak? That famous midrash that we all know, we all learn as children, right? There's a midrash, homiletical teaching of the rabbis, that here it is, the night before Mount Sinai, and which is like the most absolutely stupefying, beyond description event of human history, cataclysmic, that God comes and meets up with humanity and gives his will over, right? So the Midrash says Jewish people overslept. They didn't get up on time. They didn't wake up on time. They had to be woken up. And that's one of the reasons why we have this fascinating custom that night we stay up the whole night and try to make up for that, right? Mm-hmm. Many commentators discuss this, and they ask, come on, what is that? What is the deal? That we really overslept? What does it really mean? And there's another idea that's discussed as well, and I'm specifically thinking of some of the commentaries of Rabbi Tzadok Kohen of Lublin, Rabbi Tzadok, one of the great original thinkers of recent history in the Jewish world. He also mentions another thing. There's an idea that Israel accepted the whole Torah. Everybody knows. We said Naaseh v'nishma, we will do and we will obey. Meaning, even if we don't understand, we accept the entire Torah upon ourselves. Yet at the same time, there's also an idea that in a way, is reflected also in the Talmudic teaching that God had to force the people to accept it, and he held the mountain over them. They weren't ready to accept it, and then on Purim, this is a very famous teaching. That's when, at the miracle of Purim, that's when they really accept it, like wholeheartedly. They accepted everything. So there's several contradictions here. So what did they accept and what didn't they accept? Did they not accept it with all their heart? Did they have to be forced? And why were they kind of like why did they have to be woken up? So he discusses this whole thing in a very, very beautiful teaching. And here's what he says. It's very revealing. He says that what Israel accepted at Mount Sinai, like wholeheartedly, was the written Torah. But the oral Torah, which is the explanation that was given over by God to Moses himself, which is transmitted in every generation of exactly how to fulfill the Torah, how to keep the commandments, how it applies in every generation, and all that meat of action-oriented, how we keep the Torah, that they accepted, kind of like, they didn't really accept it, and they finally accepted it in this famous teaching when they saw the hand of God in their lives in the story of Purim that year in ancient Persia. And that's why the Megillah, the Scroll of Esther, refers to this. It says Kimu v'Kiblu, and our sages say that it refers to the fact that they began to really like apply what they had already accepted wholeheartedly. Anyway, what is this all about? It's a very beautiful teaching that he says as follows. He says, what they had a hard time accepting at Mount Sinai, which is what we're making up for when we stay up and commit ourselves to Torah study that night. We don't allow ourselves to fall asleep. What they had a hard time accepting was the oral Torah, and what that means is, because what is the oral Torah, Yitzchak? What is the oral Torah? It is the living Torah in every generation, of how every link in the chain of transmission of the legacy of Torah from Sinai is real, and how everyone participates in that, and how every generation of teacher and student becomes part of that. And that's exactly what's meant by the famous teaching that says that every question that is ever posed by a little child to his rabbi, to his student, was already said at Mount Sinai. Every question that could possibly be raised was already mentioned at Mount Sinai. It was all foreseen. It's all part of the mix, and I'm going to get to something very profound about that later as well in this program. But the idea is, he says very beautifully, Reb Tzadok, he says, you know what the Jewish people couldn't accept? The fact that we might have a novel idea, a chidush. A person could come up with an interpretation and understand something, and that's part of the Torah. That's in itself the Torah. And they were like thinking, like, who am I? Who am I to have like an idea that could be like from Sinai, that could really be holy, that could be part of the Torah? And you know, Yitzchak, that true Torah study, our rabbis encourage us to be original thinkers, to look at something and to find ourselves in the Torah. And again, I need to tell you something very deep about that as we continue the program later. What does that mean? Where am I in the Torah? Where am I, my own soul? That's what Torah study really is to find our way and to realize that Hashem is speaking to us. And when we have the audacity, as it were, the holy audacity, to not be afraid to give our own idea of a level of meaning, as long as, of course, it fits with the basic parameters of what Torah is. But there's so many different levels of meaning, and they couldn't imagine that applied to them, and that's what they held back, and as it were, and they didn't accept it. And then later at the story of Purim, when they saw the tremendous compassion and a boundless love that God has for them, they understood that they're in this for keeps, and they have the ability to speak up and to actually participate in the whole panoramic unfolding vision of what the Torah really is all about. And hopefully this level, this dimension of a real relationship where we find ourselves in the Torah and we're able to explore and we're able to express ourselves there and find meaning in every generation, that is what we accepted now upon ourselves anew when we stood at Mount Sinai just this week, which we believe we were there again, and we received the whole Torah again.
Or there again, or there for the first time again, because I think part of Shavuot is not just re-experiencing the giving of Torah, but reliving it anew. We're brand new again at Mount Sinai, receiving Torah. It's all fresh for us. It's like the lechem hapanim, like the showbread in the Holy Temple, which is forever fresh and never grows stale. That is what the Torah is for us, and we can't sleep through it. We have to wake up, smell the freshness, and apply it to our lives.
Who could sleep, when you think that this is real and that we have the opportunity to really live in a world that God gives us the chance to connect with Him and to bring that to a level of reality. It's just the most awesome privilege, and it's really very, very exciting. And it doesn't get old. Just like that miracle that's related about the showbread. There's a teaching that the showbread, 12 loaves of bread in the Holy Temple that were placed in the sanctuary, they were hot like the entire week. They never got cold. And when the incoming shift of priests came to change the loaves on Shabbat, with ones that were just baked on Friday, they found that the ones that had been placed there a week before were still hot and fresh. And the answer is really very simple. It's like something that's in the presence of God doesn't get cold, doesn't get old, doesn't get moldy or stale, or fall into any sort of disuse or rote or complacency. And that's what that teaches us. And so the same thing, of course, with our Torah study is, if we're really motivated and understand what we have and what God is giving us, then it can never possibly grow old. And I can prove that also, which is when we come back. Something I want to share with you, Yitzchak, about the concept that there's 600,000 letters in the Torah and there's 600,000 root souls, and how every single person is really a letter in the Torah. It's a very fascinating teaching as well. And there's the music. We'll be right back. Stay with us as we continue Temple Talk.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. Today is the 8th day of the month of Sivan, 5775. It is the 26th of May, 2015. We're talking about Parshat Naso, the second Parsha of the book of Bamidbar, Numbers. We're in the desert now with the nation of Israel, the children of Israel, and just to review a little bit, the different tribes are all encamped around the tabernacle, which is the heart in every manner of that word of the nation. Rabbi, in the first half of the show, you were explaining about what it meant to be sleep late, to not wake up in time on Sivan, on Shavuot, the day of receiving a Torah, and you mentioned that, we were wide awake for receiving the written Torah, but perhaps we were a little bit drowsy when it came to the oral Torah. Were you suggesting that the children of Israel didn't quite have the confidence to embrace the oral Torah at the time?
So I mentioned this is the thought expressed by the famous Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, very, very original thinker and writer, and he has this beautiful level of teaching where he's explaining, yes, exactly, that it was a sort of crisis of confidence, that they didn't really believe enough in themselves that they could actually be part of the process of the living Torah, which is, of course, everything to us. The idea that we are part of this whole legacy that was given over, that is alive, that was given over by God himself to Moses and then in every subsequent generation. And when we study Torah today, we are part of that pulsating, breathing body of knowledge. And that takes a certain level of belief in yourself also, that you as an individual count for something. So yeah, it's basically psychological insight that he's saying, that they needed to be reminded that it's real, it's for them, and that it's a manifestation of God's confidence in us, that he bequeaths the Torah to us. And on that note,
I was going to say, on that note, I mean, that is so much where we're at today.
Exactly.
we have to wake up.
It gets better, and I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that. And I think it applies very much to our generation. But I had occasion to give a class before Shavuot to a beautiful group of people, long distance via FaceTime. I gave a class, and we were talking about this idea on another level. And the idea is that, I'll share it with everyone, the idea is, there's a concept that there's 600,000 letters in the Torah, and there's 600,000 root souls, and everybody knows that there's a very, very famous passage in the Talmud that the unborn child in the mother's womb before birth knows the entire Torah. And then when a child is born, gets a tap on the lips by the angel Michael, and he forgets everything. But the expression that's used in the Talmud, which is very dramatic, is that there's like a candle lit at the head of the unborn child, and by the light of that candle, the child sees from one end of the world to the other. That's the exact expression of our sages, and knows the entire Torah. And then the minute the child is born, he forgets everything. So what is that all about, really? It basically reminds me immediately of another teaching that we've had occasion to discuss a very great deal lately. It reminds me of the teaching that the whole Sfirat HaOmer, the whole concept of the counting of the Omer, on a mystical level and on a deep level, is based on the fact that when we left Egypt, we left with a amazing, blinding, brilliant flash of light out of God's tremendous compassion for us. We left at the specific exact moment that we had to leave, but it was undeserved, right? And then it was like the next day, we were already back on this level of slave mentality, and then we have to work very slowly and count and shed off another layer of the slave mentality every day, right, as we count up to the 49 days, so that we get back to where we already were on the second day of Passover, except that it was a gift outright and it wasn't completely deserved, because it was just God's kindness. And there is a principle in Torah that if you don't work for something, if you don't make it yours by making it a real acquisition on a soul level, by striving and by conquering your own attributes, self-mastery, then it's not worth anything if it's just a freebie. You have to deserve it by working on it, and otherwise it's the bread of shame, right, as the Kabbalah calls it. So that's what the whole idea of counting. The Omer is on that level. It's about getting back to where we once belonged, as it were, getting back to ground zero, because we were already there, but then we accelerated very, very far in advance. But then we have to go back and do it in a real way, on our own, as it were. But we're getting back to the place, to stand at the foot of Mount Sinai on Shavuot, where we actually already were on the second day of Passover, except that it wasn't on the level that we could make it forever for ourselves. So too, a child learns the whole Torah in the womb, but why, if we forget it anyway? And the classic answer that's true is that Because Torah study is not like anything else. It's not like rocket science. It's not like anything else because it's already so much part of us that all of life becomes like déjà vu. Because we're actually hooking up with something that we already have, and therefore the art, as it were, and the self-discipline that's necessary in order to master Torah knowledge and in order to study it comes naturally to us because we had it already, and we are kind of like forearmed on a genetic level with this pre-birth knowledge experience. And by the way, I think very strongly that this applies to righteous Gentiles as well, who attach themselves to the God of Israel. I believe very strongly that those souls were also at Mount Sinai, and that those souls also, I believe every soul in creation, I'm using my fingers here to make these apostrophe marks, knows the whole Torah before birth. Because what is the Torah exactly? What is it? It's the reality of Hashem, it's the reality of His will, it's the reality of how to serve Him, each person according to their level. And since we all come from this connection with Hashem, then every person, I believe the sages are teaching us, is forearmed with the proper experience that with enough motivation and self-knowledge and desire for the truth and motivation to be real and to fight all the things that are holding us back, we can all reconnect with this. So that's the basic idea, right? But I take it a step further, and there's something here that is so exquisitely beautiful, it is just staggering. And it's something that I think is one of the most profound thoughts that I've ever encountered in the Torah. And that is as follows. Because while it's true that every single soul, according to this teaching, is taught in the womb everything, the entire Torah, meaning all of life, all of reality, every aspect of knowledge, and then is caused to forget it at birth, so that we have to reconnect with it, right? While that's true, there's a deeper insight, which is that just like there are 600,000 letters corresponding to 600,000 souls, what exactly is the Torah that a person studies in the womb? And this, the Arizal teaches this beautiful idea. It's not the same thing. We're not all studying the same thing. We're not all studying the same thing. Every person is studying the Torah according to his letter. In other words, the letter that you are in the Torah represents a level of interpretation. And I say this as a beautiful bridge from the first half of the show, because we were talking about the fact that you can't be afraid to interpret something. You can't be afraid to try to understand what Hashem is giving you personally, your own personal acquisition of Torah, right? The fact is, what he says is that, yes, we all study the Torah, we're all connected, but there's a level that is the symphony of your particular connection with Hashem, your particular soul. And that's what you studied. You studied the whole Torah, but according to your notes, according to your particular place in the cosmos. And thus, what transpires is that the divine work of a life, when we say, oh, reconnecting with it is déjà vu, because we already had it, but the divine work is to get back to your own Torah that is you, that you have. It's so beautiful, and it's so individual. It's breathtaking, this teaching, because yes, we all have to do all the commandments. We all have to keep Hashem's word. We all have to sanctify, and we all have to do exactly what we have to do. But there's something special that each one of us can do that no one else can do. And that's why we're in the world. And that's our particular level of Torah achievement, as it were. And this is very much reflected in many places when Rav Kook writes in Orot Torah, he actually writes these words. He says, this is why we have in the Nusach, in the liturgy of Shabbat, of our prayers, don't we say, V'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha, right? We ask Hashem in our prayers, we say, and grant us our portion in your Torah. What do you mean our portion? Because each one of us have a portion that the other one doesn't have, and it goes according to your particular soul. So it's like we all have have the whole Torah, of course, but what is it about my life, about your life, about our connection with Hashem that is the drummer that we march to, and then subtly, maybe not so subtly, hopefully throughout our lives, as we look for meaning and reconnect, the goal is to find out who we really are. And can someone else tell you that? Can someone else give you what you are? No. It's about who you are. And I think that this is a very universal idea. I'm quite positive that this same truth that the sages are conveying regarding Israel's relationship with Hashem and Torah goes for everyone, goes for all people. It goes for Gentiles as well that are connected to the God of Israel, because what it was that we were given is the blueprint in our DNA for connecting with God in this world through Torah, and that is an eternal truth. So it comes out, according to this, that everything is about motivation. Everything is about a level of interpretation that is something that we can contribute, as it were, to understanding, something that resonates within our soul. It's all very, very personal. Don't say it's not personal. It's very personal. In other words, when we receive the Torah, God willing, at Mount Sinai on Shavuot, this is like the exact illustration of everything that we've always taught about the cycle of the year and about the holidays. It's not a commemoration of a long ago event, and Shavuot may be par excellence. It's the best example of how we can demonstrate that the relationship that we have with God and with the Torah is on the most intimate level possible.
If I might add, you said something so profound, Rabbi. You're saying basically that every individual, before they're born, creation, they're born for the purpose of being mashlim, of completing the Torah. Because if every person, every soul corresponds to a letter, then without your input, without your active reacquisition of your own identity, of what letter you are in the entire Torah, then the Torah of our generation, the Torah of our existence, of our lives, is incomplete if some people are missing, if some letters are missing. So we all have this profound responsibility to rediscover, not just for our own sake, for our own benefit and betterment, but for the tikkun, for the perfection of God's world. We have to discover where we fit in and pursue that and fit in an active and positive way.
And now you just said something very profound as well, because you emphasized something that we need to remind ourselves of. It's not about just my knowledge, I'm just studying so that I'll know more, so that I could be called by a title, so that I'll, even on a higher level, so that I'll know what to do. I mean, I need to study Torah because I need to know how to serve God, okay. But it's not about amassing knowledge, and this is the most important idea about Torah study that unfortunately is neglected very often, and that is that it isn't about information, and it isn't even about inspiration. It's about transformation. It's possible to study a lot, it's possible to have all sorts of information, it's possible to have all sorts of knowledge, but if it doesn't change who we are, how we act with each other, how we react, how we treat other people, what our attributes are, how we function together with other people as society, then it didn't do anything at all, because we're not judged for how much we know, in the next world, or for how much we've accomplished in terms of turning pages or amassing information. What did it do to you here? Did it change who you are? That's really the cornerstone of a relationship with God. That's really the cornerstone of Torah study. And it doesn't get better than that. And all of these things that we're discussing, how it's about transformation, how it's about finding your own place, your own level, and reconnecting with what Hashem gave us, and how the beautiful challenge of the Déjà vu experience of life is to find out who we are in the Torah. All these things continue in the most glorious way in the month of Sivan, that this month is the month of the acquisition of true Torah, and continuing that experience. And we need all of this as armament as we approach the difficult period of the summer months and everything that all the challenges that they bring us on the spiritual level, and it doesn't get better than this. And I think this is all very intimately connected also with the first fruits, with the idea of closing the circle, of acknowledging that everything comes from Hashem, of being able to bring, the produce of our land, which is the ultimate manifestation of godliness, because it's so physical, and yet it's what Hashem gave us, and He commands us to sanctify, the first fruits, and we bring them to the Kohen and we present them to him in the holy temple. No wonder that this is connected to the festival of Shavuot and the giving of the Torah. This is all making everything so real and changes our whole perspective. The Torah didn't stay in heaven. He gave it to us on this earth to make the world into a better place. We make ourselves into better people, and that's how it begins, this process of tikkun olam, of rectifying everything. And it's just absolutely stupefying when we think about how we have this chance to make it our own, and to walk with it, and to be upright, and bring the twin loaves on Shavuot, which is chametz, right, and to divest ourselves of the slave mentality, and really seek out the true freedom, which is living a life of obedience to God. I know it's very, very unpolitically correct in today's world to talk about being obedient to God. But again, this isn't about religion, that word which we don't even like to use. It's about the nationhood of Israel. It's Israel's covenant with the Torah, and all those who identify with that and accept upon themselves also their relationship with God and their obligation to act in this world. This isn't about ritual. It's about bringing this light into the world and uplifting everything to a much higher level of closeness to God and divine purpose. And that's what Shavuot really teaches us.
If I may be so bold, Rabbi, as to add onto the theme of this show, really, which is the knowledge, the pre-birth knowledge that God grants us, and then our life's work to realize that knowledge and be part of this grand tapestry of the living Torah. We just completed a few weeks ago the book of Leviticus, which you and I love the book of Leviticus, and we describe it as the heart of the Torah, and really begins with that whisper, that inaudible whisper, and it ends with this profound message of completion and security and peace and tranquility in our land, with the Holy Temple in the center of our existence. And basically, it is a book that describes the potential of holiness, of making our lives holy, of making our world holy, of making God's world holy. And then we emerge from that into the book of Numbers, Bemidbar. Bemidbar actually means wilderness. It's almost like being born with and having that perfect knowledge, but then being born into the wilderness and having to apply it. And that, of course, is really what the book of Numbers is about, applying all that we learned in Leviticus to our day-to-day existence in this world. And of course, in the book of Numbers, we see the ups and downs, the successes and the failures, and eventually the success when we enter into the land of Israel. And that, of course, brings us right back to Shavuot, because Shavuot is the festival of entering into the land of Israel. In fact, Shavuot, which happens 50 days after Pesach, after Passover. Passover, the nation of Israel celebrated almost immediately upon entering into the land of Israel for the first time, correct? And that was sort of the celebration of our first steps in the land of Israel, but we didn't really acquire the land of Israel until we were able to produce that first crop, grain of wheat, and produce the loaves of bread. So Shavuot is really another, or perhaps the perfection of the celebration of Chag Chirut, of the festival of freedom. It's really our ultimate acquisition of the land, and if we apply that also to our acquisition of Torah, because we we realize our potential, as symbolized by the 2 loaves of bread, then it doesn't get better than Shavuot. Who needs 7 days when it's all right there?
And the Torah was given on Mount Sinai in the middle of the desert or the wilderness. And there are many connections between Shavuot and the book of Numbers as we begin now. And this week there's our second Torah portion. And it's a howling wilderness. And on this week's Torah portion, our video lesson, we're going to explore the whole concept of life in the desert that's being introduced to us now here in the book of Numbers, and how we are literally surrounding the tabernacle. And of course, this is the backdrop of our lives right now as we prepare to enter into the land of Israel.
Rabbi, it's been wonderful learning with you today. Thank you. Thanks for all the inspiration, and thank you everybody for being with us. Just as we were together at Mount Sinai receiving Torah, we're here again today, learning Torah and acquiring it for ourselves in our own lives. Thank you for being with us. Temple Talk.